Hi everyone. So I just watched the horror movie The Babadook. I don't know. Is it even a horror movie? It is maybe psychological horror, and I just want to say a few quick words about it because I feel it is a movie that needs maybe a little bit of explaining, um, but it doesn't need too much of explaining. Maybe a little bit, and then people probably get it. Um, it's a very psychological movie, um, and it was difficult for me to watch. Not because it's scary. It is scary. It is scary, but it's not scary like a typical horror movie. But it is, like the atmosphere and the way, um, uh, the whole thing with the Babadook is done, and the way that a children's book is done. It's kind of artsy and stylish, but also very atmospheric, and it is very scary. I suggest watching it in your bed with the lights off late at night, um, which is how I watched it, and that amplifies it a little bit. The it being scary, and it really is scary. But it's not like your typical horror movie. It it's actually very untypical for a horror movie because um, nobody actually dies. Usually in horror movies, you have a whole bunch of people who get killed in some horrific fashion. But in this movie, nobody dies. Well, okay, that's not entirely true. The dog is killed. Yeah, the dog is murdered. But that's it. No human is killed. So, but it has basically it has a human body count of 0, but it's still a very scary horror movie, and especially for me, the scenes where, um, well, maybe this is giving away a bit of a spoiler. So if you haven't watched the movie and you don't want to be spoiled, maybe just watch the movie. So, the scenes where the mother is basically possessed by the Babadook, those were very scary, especially for me, because they reminded me of my own childhood and of my own mother. My mother really was like that. At least when she went psycho, she really was as scary as the mother in this movie. And of course, the reason she acted that way was not because she was possessed by some imaginary Babadook thingy, but because of her mental illness, basically, which is exactly the same in this movie. And this is maybe what needs explaining. What is the Babadook? A lot of people are confused by that. And what is the Babadook? And does the Babadook really exist, or is it maybe just symbolical, or is it some kind of fairy tale creature, like from obviously some very dark fairy tale. So a lot of people are puzzled by that. What is the Babadook? So yes, of course, the Babadook is symbolical. But what does it symbolize? Well, a lot of people say that it actually does symbolize the mother's mental illness. And in that sense, it does exist. It is real. Because her anxiety and her depression and her angst are very real, and they won't go away, and that's why the Babadook will not go away, and that's why the Babadook is real, and that's why the Babadook is able to manifest himself. But if you notice, he's pretty much only able to really manifest himself through the mother. She is the Babadook, or rather, she creates the Babadook. And I think a lot of people haven't noticed that, but I'm sure this can't be a coincidence. If you watch the movie again and you pay close attention, you notice that at the beginning of the movie, the mother says that she used to write children's books. That used to be her profession. She used to write children's books. Okay, so then suddenly this children's book pops up, the Babadook, and nobody really knows where it comes from. It's just there. Maybe it was lying there for a bunch of years, or we don't know. But we don't know where that book came from. So it's very obvious now, isn't it, that is her book. Or at least that's very likely. That book was created by her, because that's what she does. She creates children's books. So of course, normally she wouldn't create such a dark children's book, but she's going through some very difficult times. That's made very obvious in the movie. Her husband died tragically, and she's getting very depressed. She can't really cope with it, and especially she can't cope with her son, who's who probably himself can't really cope with never having had a dad, and on top of that, the day his father died was his birthday, so that makes it very traumatic for both of them, so it's very difficult. They're in a very difficult situation, and the son goes through a very difficult phase, and all of that really makes it very difficult for the mother. And so she develops that fear and that anxiety and depression and angst and phobias, and she manifests them in that book. That's her way, and that's actually how it is for a lot of artists. Their art is their way of expressing their feelings, and in this case those are of course very natural feelings, their fear and anxiety. And it's the same with the son. He has the same fear, and he has this is made clear at the beginning of the movie, even before the Babadook shows up, even before they show the book, even before he sees the book. He is afraid of what is basically the boogeyman, and he's afraid that there is someone hiding in his room, or someone hiding under his bed, and basically both of them project their fears into the Babadook. The Babadook is a manifestation of both of their fears, and she manifests them in that book. So in that sense, the movie is a little similar to The Exorcist, and maybe you've noticed that some of the effects and stuff they're using, it's a bit of a rip-off of The Exorcist, and also some of the effects are kind of inspired, let's say, by Jacob's Ladder. But there is another way in which this movie is similar to The Exorcist, and that is that you can view it from two entirely different angles. You can say that, this is a supernatural horror, and the Babadook is this supernatural being that has supernatural powers. Just like you can watch The Exorcist and say, oh yeah, there are demons and supernatural stuff going on, and bats floating, and heads turning 360 degrees, and a lot of supernatural stuff going on, and ghosts and spirits and possession. You can view it from that angle and say it's supernatural horror. Or you can view it from an entirely different angle and say, well, there is nothing supernatural about it, and view it from a psychological standpoint. And then you realize that all of the things that appear to be supernatural are actually just psychological. They're and symbolical. So in The Exorcist, you can say, well, yeah, Regan is possessed by a demon. Or you can say, well, Regan might be a rape victim. And if you read it from that point of view, you realize that there are a lot of hints to that Regan might actually have been raped. And the way she reacts to that is a lot like a rape victim. And it's the same with the Babadook. You can say that the mother is possessed by this supernatural entity, the Babadook, whatever that may be. Or you can say that it's you can view it from a psychological aspect, and I already explained a bit about that, and realize that the Babadook is essentially a manifestation of her fears, and there is nothing supernatural. The Babadook is no supernatural being that comes into the room from some other dimension or through supernatural means or something. You can view it that way, or you can say, well, she created the Babadook, and she actually, she becomes the Babadook. She becomes the physical manifestation. There is no need for any supernatural elements because, there is actually nothing supernatural in this movie. Not really, because, of course, the Babadook it looks like a supernatural entity, but we don't really see the Babadook. Well, we only see it she can see the Babadook, but basically nobody else can. And the only way the Babadook can manifest himself in the physical world is through her. And she basically created that through her fears, through her anxiety, and then those fears, those phobias, they turn around and they start controlling her actions, and that's when she herself turns into the Babadook, turns into essentially a monster. And a lot of people were puzzled by the ending. They kind of defeated the Babadook, but not really. The Babadook is still there. The monster is still there. So her fears, her anxiety, her mental illness is still there, but at the end she learned to control it, and that's all she was able to do is to control it. She is no longer controlled by it. Her fear, her anxiety, her phobias, they are still there, but she is no longer controlled by them, and instead she turned it around and she is now in control.